Welcome to another episode of Awaken the Feminine Within. We are diving into why is happiness, why does it feel elusive? Why does it feel like, I feel like there's just this whole stuck energy and there's a lot of resistance in collective society against happiness. There's a lot of resentment towards happiness. And so we are going to dig into that today. So I have been super active on TikTok lately. And if you guys are like, ooh, I love TikTok, go and follow me there at Miriam Bulcher. And I talk a lot, of course, about the context of feminine energy. And I've also been in this process of clarifying my brand, my coaching brand, because I've been coaching for about a year and a half now, but it's kind of evolved. And so I started originally with photographers, coaching photographers, because I do have a photography business. And then it moved into, okay, let's talk a little bit more about business mindset generically. And then it just fully was like, nope, it's got to be feminine energy. And so I have been working with a story brand expert to clarify my brand, and it has been so eye-opening. And there's been certain realms that I've wanted to really make feminine energy easy and bite-sized for people to digest and for people to really truly understand. And so I felt like TikTok was a really great way for me to tap into, again, okay, what is it that the collective society and when people are thinking about feminine energy? And what's been really frustrating is people seem to, and again, this is mostly from a TikTok perspective, is people seem to view feminine energy only in the context and the perspective of dating and oh, how do you attract the man for you? And I'm over here and I'm like, hold on a minute. Because, and if you've listened to my podcast, feminine energy is so much broader than just relationships. It is so anxiety. For me, feminine energy, I discovered it in the context of business, in the context of entrepreneurship. And it brought me to this life that, yes, of course, the relationship stuff came, but the joy, it got rid of my anxiety, my depression, my frustration. It permanently got rid of that stuck feeling that I felt like was perpetuating me. And it was just overwhelming my life for so long. And so as someone who's very intuitive, when I watch videos, I get a feeling, and this is honestly, being intuitive and being a very sensitive person is a double-edged sword, because I can go onto TikTok and be like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what society is feeling. I can tap into what the collective society world is struggling with and dealing with. And sometimes I have to be very careful because it can feel very overwhelming and I can get depressed simply from watching TikTok. And I took actually a 7-month hiatus from January 1st up until pretty much a couple weeks ago from TikTok because I was so drained from taking on all that energy. And so, but the upside to this is that being able to view and understand what other people were really struggling with. And in my context and in my world, I really wanted to get a good understanding, what is it in the relationship to feminine energy that women are really ultimately truly struggling with? And you guys, the ones that are listening, I want you to tell me outside of what I'm talking about here today, I want you to tell me what you are ultimately, what you feel your life's biggest issues are in the Facebook group. If you haven't already, go and join it. The link is down below. The Intuitive Woman, I want to hear from you. I structure my podcast content on, okay, what does my audience need to hear? What is the collective, what do women really need right now? And how can I help them? So the more you give me and the more you talk about okay, well, this is what I've been thinking. This might be something that I'm struggling with. It's actually going to help other women because you are not alone. There are so many women who are struggling. And I try my best through this podcast to reach and to talk about as many things as I possibly can that are going to aid and that are going to help you. So just putting that out there. But let's get to this big thing. What I kept feeling from these videos that I was watching on TikTok and just getting quiet and really feeling into okay, what are women ultimately struggling with is happiness is even thinking about it. And I can attest to this because I would have experienced this in the past. If I think back to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, is if I think about me being a happy person, it feels like a trigger. I'm nope, I'm not going to think about that because happiness feels like it's not really something that should be mine. When was the last time you even really truly thought about being happy? Because it feels like it's too far away. It's something that's not really meant for you, which is a damn shame. I'm just going to say that straight up, is that we have fallen into this, belief and this oh, shoot, I don't actually want to think about that because I don't actually believe and think that that's something that's capable of me. We've fallen so deep into this whole of give, just let everyone walk all over me, and until the point where I snap. And usually, and I'm seeing this a ton on TikTok, is like women are getting to that point where they're like, I'm over men, I'm divorced, I am so frustrated, because they let their frustration take over and build instead of tackling. I'm not saying it was wrong for them to get divorced. Absolutely not. They did what they felt was right, what was right for them. But they could have avoided the scenario. They could have avoided this, frustration and this anger. It's like, because they dealt with so much frustration and then they snapped, now what they're living in is resentment and anger and a different kind of frustration. And I'm like, okay, well, this could have been avoided, right? Like, and this is why I want to have this conversation, is why is it so difficult, and why does it feel so terrifying to think about you as a happy person and that you yourself can experience happiness? Why does it feel elusive? Why does it feel like a plague that, sure, we have so many things that we can access in today's society, right? Especially if you live in the United States. Like, we have access to things that so many other people don't have access to. And we are, we're supposed to be living this American dream. And yet we're over here and we're like, feels like it's the farthest thing from the truth. Like, we're frustrated, we're burnt out, we're anxious, we have so many health problems, we're overweight. Like, there's so many things that are plaguing us that we don't feel like we have the right to even entertain the idea of what it's like to be happy, because it feels like we should be the ones who are supposed to suffer. It's like this glorified victimhood of, and I mean, I'll attest to this, I was there. I mean, like, I 100% believe this, like, a couple years ago, but it's this like, oh, I'm glorifying myself, and the only way I can feel good is if I relate to everyone else that's also suffering. So it's a game and it's a competition of how much can I suffer? How much can I give? How much can I run myself into the ground so I can feel worthy of whatever it is, worthy of living? I don't know. Like, I don't even know what that is. It's like, why do we do this? Why do we perpetuate this problem? And why do we resist feeling positive emotion? Honestly, that's what it comes down to, is why does positive emotion substitute happiness with positive emotion? Why does it feel elusive? And why do we resist it so much? Why does it feel so guilty? Why do we feel so guilty for experiencing any kind of positive emotion? And we don't struggle with this as children. Like, as children, we literally we grow from positive emotion, or we get traumatized by negative emotion and negative experiences from that. And so what is it about positive emotion? What is it about happiness that feels so, nope, that's not on the table for me? So let's break that down even further, because what does happiness look like for you? Because I mean, I feel like for me, thinking back to myself 3 years ago and thinking about happiness, it meant not struggling with bills. It was a very practical, like, the way I think about it and the way I probably would have described it would have been a very practical approach. So what is it about happiness? Honestly, it was very just like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to struggle with bills. I'm going to have more time with my family and my kids. I'll be at my ideal weight. And I'm like, and now I think about it in a healed feminine energy state. And I'm like, whoa, those are very superficial things. Like, what is happiness? Happiness is where you feel joy, where you feel a sense of contentment. And you don't need any of those 3 things, aesthetic, weight, healthy weight, bills paid, to feel a sense of happiness. And we think that, money buys happiness. Well, that's not true, because people who are detached from material things, or people that are poor, are often some of the happiest people, right? Because they're so focused on what they have and the gratitude and the life that they're able to live, because they're coming at it from that perspective, and they're not resisting positive emotion. They're anchoring themselves in positive emotion, which is why they're happy, which is why they are, able to, from the outside, giving this appearance of like, oh yeah, they're actually really, truly happy. So what is it? What does happiness look like for you? Because it doesn't have to be this big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It doesn't have to be this big thing that you get after a certain period of time. Happiness is something, number one, that is your birthright. Like you 100% should be happy. You should be content. You should be able to experience joy. What is it about those emotions that you feel like you are not worthy of? Because in order to open yourself up to the idea of like, oh, I can experience happiness, even if I'm struggling to pay the bills, even if I am not happy with my weight currently as it is, even if, you know, I'm estranged from my sibling and that just happened, or I'm estranged from my children, like, what does it look like for me to be happy? What is it about peace and joy and contentment that I'm resisting so intensely? Why don't you feel worthy of being happiness? And this is a great journaling exercise. I mean, honestly, a lot of the single episodes that I do here where it's just me without a guest are really, really amazing and incredible journaling exercises. So I try to make them a little bit shorter so that it's easier, you know, so that there's variety in between listening. Because whenever I have a guest on, it is so easy to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. So, because honestly, like, you know, I didn't realize that I had been resisting the simplicity of joy until I opened myself up and did this feminine energy work. I have to take my glasses off. If you're, again, watching my YouTube videos, it's all over the place. But so what is it? Why? What is it about joy and contentment? Where is the resistance coming from? Because similar to the episode that I did, that would have been 2 episodes about how to build unshakable confidence, where are the feelings coming from? Where are they rooted in? Because what I'm feeling and what I'm sensing is coming up is that it's worth. You don't actually believe that you're worthy of experiencing happiness. Why? Could have been, like, for me, it was like looking at my parents. I mean, for the longest time, I would say that my parents are happy now. But I feel like in the time that I was growing up, my parents like totally believed that it wasn't something that they should have. I think they were trying to achieve it, but they didn't know how to get there. There was like no roadmap on being happy because we all have such customized and personalized living experiences. We all have a different level of trauma that it's very, very difficult to be, you know, for me to write a roadmap and be like, great, here's how you experience happiness. However, the best thing that you can do is to, again, like I said, sit down with a notebook, journal. And even if you're driving right now, you can start, you know, pause this episode and start thinking back and being like, okay, where are the examples in my life of happy people? Do I even know of anyone who is experiencing or how I would describe as being a happy person? Can you name someone? Is there someone that you feel like you've had an example of what happiness? And then if the answer is no, I cannot think of anybody, then think about like, okay, well, what feels right to me in terms of like what a happiness example looks like? Is it someone who's just, and I mean, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, people are just naturally happy. No, that's not, I mean, yes, character-wise, some people might, you know, be a little bit more easygoing and that might come across as being happiness. But ultimately, what does it look like for you? You can even create an example of like, what would it look like if someone walked into your life that you got a happy vibe from? What do you think they would look like, talk like, feel like? What kind of vibe would you be getting from them outside of just like, okay, yeah, they're a positive person, right? Like, what does it ultimately look like and feel like to be happy? Because just like self-confidence, happiness is something that you have to choose. You have to opt into. You have to be like, yeah, that's something I want to experience for myself. I want to choose to be content with my life. That doesn't mean that you're settling. It doesn't mean that you're letting go of your goals. It doesn't mean that you're dropping things that are important to you. That's not what that means. I mean, I'm still working on so many things, but I would 100% say that I'm a happy person. Now, just because I'm not smiling all the time doesn't mean that I'm not a happy person. It just means that, you know, happiness to me is something that is so soul level. And I think that's why there's a lot of resistance around and like why we get triggered by happy people, because we're like, oh, ooh, that person's really kind of annoying, right? Because they have something that you want. Happy people, in my experience, are, you know, they don't hold any kind of resentment. They don't hold anything against other people. They don't grudge. They don't remember like really minute, not important details. they're not generally type A. They're a little bit more like easygoing, let go. And it's because they're choosing what's important to them, right? Which is like life, family, friends, fun activities in their life. They are being very picky and choosy about what is important to them. And so they're able to let go of the things that are not, they might be important to some other people, but because it's not important to them, they're able to let go. They're able to let things slide because it's like, well, what really matters here? And so I think that us women, we struggle with this a lot because we're like, okay, well, I have to give to my kids and I have to, this societal laundry list of things that we attach our identity to. Okay, well, if I'm a mom or if I'm a grown woman who's running my own business, I have to do, X, Y, Z. I have to be really busy. I have to work a work schedule like a 9 to 5. You don't need any of that. You can choose to unsubscribe from all of those things that have kept your identity like as it is right now, especially if you're listening to this episode and you're like, yeah, that identity doesn't serve me because it's not getting me, number one, to my goal, and it's not giving me the happiness that I want to have. You can 100% be happy even if you are in a personal development journey, even if you feel like your life is falling apart and it's not really making sense. And you're like, okay, you can definitely choose that happiness. You can experience that happiness. Happiness is something that you can have. And if you need to let go of these beliefs that are not serving you in order to tap into that experience of happiness, don't you think that that would be worth it? Because do you not think you get one life to live? Would you not rather choose to take a risk on something and be like, you know what? I'm either halfway through my life or I'm, a little over a quarter way through my life and I feel like I haven't been able to experience happiness 100%. I definitely, and I'm not talking about happy as like the superficial, like, oh, I'm going to go drink or I'm going to go on vacation type of happiness. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to this deep soul level contentment. Like, yeah, I know, like this is what joy feels like to me. This is what, it's like a blossom that's coming from your heart outward. Like it's really, truly coming from inside of you. It's not some superficial feeling that's going to dissipate after, someone gave you some bad news. Like it is a part of you. It is coming from you. It is inside of you. Like you can't just like rip it out just because you're choosing to just be like, well, I'm not going to be happy today. Like, no, it is something that you foster. It is something that is so critical to who you are. And so what is it about happiness that we can shift and start changing to make it a little bit more, yeah, that's within my reach. Like, yeah, I can choose that. I can choose to be happy. I can choose to open myself up to positive emotion. Oh my gosh, I feel like positive emotion is so ratted on. Like, it's this elusive, like, oh, well, yeah, I see so many people living that and experiencing that, and I really want to have that. But then that safety zone, that comfort bubble of negative emotion just overrides everything. And there are more negative emotion than there are positive emotions. Like if you look at an emotion wheel, there are not very many, and there are not as many positive emotions. But honestly, you could say the same thing. I mean, it's like the news, right? Like you hardly ever positive emotion or positive news, and the world is flooded with negative news. Negativity produces a stronger response and a stronger reaction. Then I would say, I wouldn't compare it to love because I feel like love is one of the strongest emotions, but it's like more, for example, anger, depression, like failure, those all are very, very stark, polarizing emotions that have a very strong root. They have a very strong response. And so what happens is because they're from an inward and an outward perspective, they're very strong. It's so much easier to latch onto them. And of course, you have a collective society issue as well. Like society as a whole has a tendency to lean more towards negative emotions than positive emotions. And I feel like it's been that way for so long. And so how do you, in a society where everyone else is feeling pulled towards negative emotion, choose to be what feels like the one person who's going to choose to live a happy life and is going to choose this different route, this different path, this, it's like deciding to leave a friend group where you're like, I don't want to gossip anymore. And all of them know nothing but gossiping. And you're like, it means going on your own. It means carving your own path. It means recognizing that you are powerful and capable of choosing your own path, and that you're going to find your own group. You're going to find your own new people. You're going to find that it's more gratifying and you're going to get more in return, but that does mean choosing you. That does mean to take the risk of opening yourself up to a plethora of positive emotions and establishing a new security net of positivity and not negativity. Because, and again, speaking from experience here, I 100% like negativity was like my wheelhouse. And I, for the longest time, would blame it on my mom. I was like, oh, well, my mom's a negative Nancy. So like, that's where I got it from. Partially is true, but not so much in terms of like I kept thinking of it as like a character trait. Like some people are just naturally more positive and some people are naturally more negative. And it's just hilarious when I think back about how I thought about that, because what I'm seeing now is no, that was just, I was taking on my mom's belief systems about life, period. Now, if she had been a positive person, I wouldn't have taken on that belief set that like, oh, well, life is going to be shitty. Life is going to hand you lemons 24/7 on a platter, like you're going to drown in lemons. And I wouldn't have taken that on if she had thought otherwise. And I'm doing my absolute hardest to make sure that I pass on the positive, like, yes, you can be happy now. You can choose your own happiness. You can carve your own path. You can absolutely choose a perspective that you want to have for your life. You're not dictated, like, again, very much no anti-victimhood mode. Like, I am trying my hardest to be like, no, you're the one who's responsible. Don't fall into this trap of just because society is feeling that means that you have to feel that too. Just because that's what society's identity for women and that's what society and marketing and companies are relying on to make money off of doesn't mean that you have to fall into that trap as well. I mean, like, I bought summer clothes, like back in May, and I literally have not bought a single piece of apparel since then. And it's just, I'm like, no, I don't need to. Like, I have, my like summer capsule wardrobe that I'm like rotating through. Perfect. Don't need it. And it's so funny because I keep getting ads and emails and like so many coupons for people to kind of come and shop. And I'm like, no, I don't actually need that. Like, I'm sure my body is changing. And in theory, I might need some things, but I'm like, you know what? I'm really happy and content. I don't really need anything. So I'm not going to go and buy that stuff. I'm not going to fall into that trap. And the same thing goes with like a bunch of other things like house and, going to Target and just getting things for the sake of getting things, like, seeing trends. It's like, okay, well, I actually saw a really fascinating video about a European talking about the need for why moms are always going to Target. And she's like, there's less support here in terms of like, and I don't mean just like kid support, but there's less community. From what her observation was, that there was less community here in the US than there was from where she was from, which was England, ironically, only because my sister lives in England and I don't think I've ever really had that conversation with her necessarily. And she was like, it's just one of the reasons I think why women are going to Target so often is because they're searching for that dopamine. They're searching for that sense of community. They're searching for that sense of like, where am I going to feel rooted, right? And community is a huge part of that. Having like-minded people is a huge part of that. Again, why I created the Facebook group, like go and post and share and get vulnerable, because like we are all experiencing a variation of a similar problem, right? And so it is so important to find the people and the women that are like-minded that are going through the same thing as you, and you can share. And like, we are not supposed to keep our burdens to ourselves. We are supposed to share them in a like-minded way so we can comfort other people. Like, that is what it is, such a core part of femininity as a whole. And it's like, we've gotten into this wounded femininity for so long. I feel like, especially since, it's been around feels like the dawn of time, but it's like, okay, let's let go of what it's like to see other women as a threat and to instead offer comfort and solidarity and support. And how much more can I practice that in my day-to-day living, in addition to choosing my own happiness, to choose to let go, to unsubscribe from the beliefs that society has been trying to push me into, which is victim mode. Oh, I'm only going to find my happiness once I lose weight. Oh, I'm only going to find happiness once I, have a job where I'm earning multiple six figures, or, oh, I'm only going to find happiness once I move into my dream house, or I'm only going to find happiness once I go on that, amazing vacation with friends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, no, your happiness is you deciding that you can experience it now, no matter what everyone else is saying, and really, truly hugging your inner child version of you and being like, you know what, girl, you deserve to be happy. Like, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do that for that little child that, thought for sure she was going to live her best life ever and that she was going to achieve all these amazing and wonderful things. Like, yes, we do owe it to ourselves to try. If anything, if that's all you get from today's episode, is like, it is 100% worth it to step outside of the identities that have been, thrown at us, whether you're a mom, whether you're a businesswoman, whether you're a single woman, it doesn't really matter. But like, stepping away from those identities and choosing that, you know what, I'm not going to be so scared of positive emotion. Yes, it's going to feel really weird. It might even trigger the crap out of you. I mean, positive emotion, I know for me, it still is. I have to choose it every single morning, every single night. I'm like, okay, I want to live in the positive. I want my life to be dominated by positive feeling, because my subconscious standard is negative all the time, 100%. That's where my safety zone is. That's why I have to be very, very careful around self-pity, because that usually is like the door that opens the floodgates for me to a bunch of negative emotions. Self-hatred, depression, anxiety, victim mode. Oh my gosh, it is so bad for me. And so I have to be much more thoughtful and much more intentional about how I'm choosing my identity throughout the day, throughout the afternoon, throughout the hours. Say something happens. I actually just saw something happened earlier today where I saw a lady had inquired with me for a photography service. And then we kept missing each other through phone call. And then eventually I was like, okay, I wasn't hearing back from her. So let it slide. She went with another photographer. And immediately, today I was like, oh, sad. But of course, I was also like, you know what? Like, good for her, the other photographer. I was like, good for her. I was like, honestly, I'm like, there is more than enough for all of us. Like, I am going to choose to support both of them because there's enough for everybody. Like, just because she went to somebody else doesn't mean that I'm losing. It doesn't mean, and I'm like, I'm going to choose joy and I'm going to choose positivity because they both deserve it. And I am not going to be like, woe is me. Oh, like they don't like me. What the heck? What's going to happen with my business? No, none of that. So I have to, and it took a hot minute because the self-pity mode was like on standby, ready to whack me across the face and burrow me in a hole. And I'm like, for me, it's a domino effect. It's like, as soon as I open crack that door open, it can lead to me being out for a week. And it does affect my business. It does affect my family life. It does affect my ability to show up for my clients. And so I have to be super careful and super self-aware about my emotions, and journaling and me making a promise to myself about positive emotion. That's like, yeah, I can do it. I can experience more positive emotion in my life. I am worthy. I repeat that to myself over and over again. I'm like, I'm going to fight for me. I'm not just going to let go and let this, negative emotion take over. No, I am going to choose this and I'm going to fight for it because I deserve it. And I only have one life, and I'm not going to spend any more time feeling like it's elusive to me. Nope, it's mine. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to grab it. I don't feel like I'm going to be on the other, that it's on the other side of this mountain and I have to go climbing all over. No, I can reach out to it. I'm going to shorten that gap. I'm going to shorten that distance. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to touch it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to hold it close to my heart, and I'm never going to let it go. So if you take one thing away today, open yourself up to positive emotion. Journal it. Oh my gosh, journaling is so incredible in this process. And put a reminder in your phone right now. Go like, hey Siri, hey Google, set a reminder to journal tonight at 8:00. Hopefully that didn't set off your phone. But, set a reminder. It is so easy to let our lives rule us, but you are the one who gets to rule your life. If you feel like time is always getting away from you and you're like, oh shoot, I meant to do that. Set a reminder, set a calendar, and you have to fight for it. It may feel like pulling teeth, but you are going to have to fight for you. It's well worth it. I promise it is well worth it. But keeping your own word is probably going to be, as a woman, it's the hardest thing because it's going to be always easy to say yes to everyone else instead of saying yes to you. But you need you. This joy, contentment is based on how much you can say yes to you and how much you can keep your own promises and how much you can fight for you. You are worth it. Just like you would want, someone to fight, your best friend to fight for you, you got to choose to fight for you. And just like you would fight for, your mom or your sister or your best friend, you got to also do that for you. You can't do it for other people if you're not going to do it for you. You deserve your own attention. You deserve your own love. You deserve you. Okay? So if you haven't already, as I mentioned earlier, go and join the Facebook group. Tell me what your takeaways were from this podcast today. And if you're like, yeah, I really want to work on this a little bit more, get the journal. The link is down below. I have an Awaken Your Feminine journal. It goes through the 4 phases of what it is like to open yourself up to feminine energy. It's amazing. It's $34. Definitely check it out in the link below. And follow me on TikTok, follow me on YouTube, all the things. If you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would also be amazing. Lots of things. I don't want to go on too much more because, of course, there's always so many things that, one can do and one can recommend. But definitely, top thing, go post on the Facebook group and then check out the journal. But I will talk to you in the next episode. Much love to you all and have an amazing day.